talked about this show last
remember.
time we talked. I think it was headed to New York.
Yeah,
But it's a bigger deal, I think, for something like this, especially
yeah,
to
yeah,
play in Detroit,
yeah.
because we own this, right? This
You
is
own this.
our
Detroit owns
story,
this.
and you can't get away with anything.
No, absolutely not.
Showing this story to us.
It's
So
just
talk
so
about Ain't Too
amazing.
Proud. Yeah.
I'm really happy to have Ain't Too Proud, The Life and Times of the Temptations,
Hmm.
here in Detroit at the Detroit Opera House. It's been a long time coming. It's our Broadway tour. We were supposed to be, Detroit was supposed to be one of the first stops when we were originally going to do the tour in 2020, but we all know what happened in 2020. And
Hmm.
so that delay has shifted things around. And so it feels like it's just been a long time coming to get here to Detroit to do this
Yeah.
show. And we were on Broadway, and the COVID shut the show down on Broadway. And so now that we're doing this Broadway tour and we've been in all these cities, it just feels like a new life to be here. And it's more important. I mean, being in Detroit, you could just ask the cast, you could see it on their faces when they're performing. Like, it just feels this feels more important than Broadway. This is like the most important performance you could be doing is the ones you're doing here in Detroit right now.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and the story, of course, of the Temptations
Yeah,
is in many ways the story of Detroit. Of course, it's the story of Motown as well, but it is a Detroit story in the sense of that perseverance, that
yeah,
focus on who you are and where it takes you in life, and the celebration of all of the things that make us Detroiters. I mean,
yeah.
the Temptations are Detroit in such a special way.
That's right. And I make sure, and I promise in the show that I'm not gonna let you forget that this is the Temptations are a Detroit, homegrown Detroit group.
Yeah.
That
Hmm.
this group was born and raised here in the city that grew all of the rest of their contemporaries. And I try to make sure that that stamp is really clear in this show.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Talk about this being on Broadway as well. I mean, that was a very big deal when that happened. How did that audience receive this story?
Yeah. It was really special. I mean, and they went bananas for it on Broadway. And honestly, if not for Omicron, kind of ravaged all of Broadway, really, and a lot of shows closed prematurely, just too many, and a lot of them were the Black shows, which is like the heartbreak. But there was a moment in which Ain't Too Proud was on 45th. Well, the theater is on 45th and 46th Street because the front of it is on 45th and the back of it is on 46th Street. And then my show Skeleton Crew was on 47th Street. So
Hmm. Hmm.
for a very short period of time, like a month, I had two Broadway shows taking up 3 blocks of New York City Broadway real estate, and that was kind of exciting. I was like, whoa, Detroit is taking over New York right now. And so it's just been really amazing because it was so well received, and it kind of doesn't make sense that we're not still on Broadway, except for, it just everything came Broadway almost came back. I won't say too soon, but too fast, and
Hmm.
without enough foresight of how to like maintain if a surge happened. Um, and so, but the show was so, people loved it. They were, they were, it was one of those special ones. And you can also tell, like, it's just kind of rare for Black musical theater artists to be able to be their full selves on
Hmm.
a Broadway stage. They're used to having to like cover or be told that they're singing to, make too many runs, that
Hmm.
that somehow their speech pathology, that they're not speaking articulately enough, for Broadway to be on a stage. And I'm like, no, you need to sound like your elders and your ancestors right now in this show. You need to sound like
Need to sound like
the dude.
Detroit.
You need to sound like Detroit. You need to sound like around the corner and up the block. And so I think it was kind of freeing for all of the artists who were participating in the show to be able to be their full self. So when you watch it, you're just blown away by all this Black talent that doesn't normally get to do what they can do
Yeah,
all the time.
yeah. Uh, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that this play also won a Tony for
Yeah.
choreography.
Yeah.
Talk
Yeah.
about that. I mean, that's an incredible achievement.
Yeah, I mean it is. I mean, it was nominated for 12 Tony Awards, and we
Mhm.
took the choreography Tony. And I was like, if there was one Tony that we needed besides obviously the book,
Right.
which I feel like we got robbed on, not just because it was me, but because I knew I felt very strongly, and I think other people did too, that was the one that should
Mhm.
have gotten it. But I was gonna throw my shoe at somebody if we didn't get that choreography Tony, because I just couldn't. I mean, you can't. The choreography in the show is outstanding, and you can't even like. It's. You mean it's the Temptations, and then there's also a touch of so many more groups that followed them. It sort of
Yep.
like does this nod to the past and to the generations that came after them, right? It's a little bit of a new edition nod, and there's a little bit of none of other styles, and I think that how could you not go crazy for that choreography?
But my life is incomplete and I'm so blue. Cause I can't get next to you. I can't get next to you, baby. I can't get next to you. I can't get next to you, baby. I can't get next to you. Oh, next to you.
That choreography Tony went to Sergio Trujillo, who was our choreographer. And he got that alongside Edgar Gardner, who was his associate choreographer. I mean, there was a lot of gifted minds and talent that went into that choreography that was made it stellar.
Yeah. Well, and thinking and speaking about the celebration of Black art on Broadway, that nod for choreography. I mean, this is obviously a very Black show in every way, and then the choreography reflects our culture in a way that other plays don't do on Broadway. And for those
Right.
reasons that you're talking about, they always say you can't be that much on Broadway.
Right.
Here you did it, and
Yeah.
you're recognized with the best award that they have.
Yeah. 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 Absolutely. I mean, it's deserved, and then and so so many more things were deserved as well. And I think everybody who got nominated deserved their nomination. Like, it was a
Yeah.
fantastic production, and
Yeah.
so I'm really proud. And this company that we have here in Detroit, they're not some of them were like covers for us on Broadway. Some of them came from Broadway, but a lot of them did not. They just joined for the tour, and they rival. Trust me, you're not getting I get nervous when I look at them, like, okay, are we gonna fall? It's like something gonna lose some quality. And I watch the show, and I'm like, I've been here from the beginning. I've been with this show since we were like in the Bay Area, just trying it out
Mm-hmm.
before we got to Broadway. We went to like 3 cities. I've seen a lot of rotations of this show, and you're getting a stellar cast.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're getting a stellar cast. Yeah, this is a great production and a great group of people.
Yeah. The success that this had in New York, the success that you've had in New York, you feel like things are changing in terms of opportunity for African-American writers, African-American material, material that's influenced by African-American culture. I mean, Broadway was so closed to us for so long, and now
Yeah.
it seems there's almost a flood of recognition in some ways that, hey, that wasn't all right.
Well, coming off of 2022, this past season, 21-22, really, I guess it was the end of 2021, but there ended up being 8 Black shows on Broadway, which is unprecedented.
Mm-hmm.
You'd be lucky if you catch 1 or 2 at the same time, in like several years, but in 1 year,
Mm-hmm.
all of these Black shows together were on Broadway. And while that felt it was a milestone, and it gives you hope. But I always say, don't make that optical. Don't make that an optical illusion. We were also the first ones brought back during we brought theater back from the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
So we were also the pandemic test dummies. You know what I mean? So it was like, it looks good, but also, whose shows all closed first? you know?
Right.
Whose shows didn't get to stay up on Broadway because of the fraught time that we were having to do theater in, you know? And so you can't look at those Black shows and what happened to our shows on Broadway and then go, well, we tried, and move on. You know what I mean? You have to be like, oh no, you know, you look what you put us up against.
Yeah.
And look how even still there was a hunger and a desire to see this work on Broadway. So imagine when we're not in the thick of a plague that was like more aggressive than the original plague, you know. Imagine what we could do if not for those circumstances. And I think if those things are not taken into consideration, then you're not really trying to change Broadway. You know, but I do think at their time, there's enough being called for and demanded, frankly, from theater artists to change not just Broadway, but theater across the country, and make it better and more equitable. And so I believe in that change more than I believe in the optical illusions.